Boom, we are live. Took a little minute. We are using an iPhone, I believe. Is that an iPhone you're on?
It is an iPhone I'm on. My PC crashed.
iPhone actually works with StreamYard. So, folks, if you're doing any kind of live streaming on your own, give it a shot. Looks really good. John here, J. Paul Nadeau, a very handsome fellow
Thank you.
right here. And how are you doing today, Paul?
You know what? I'm doing great. It's been a busy day and I've got a lot accomplished, so I'm feeling accomplished. How about yourself?
Oh, pretty much the same thing. Managed to be really busy without leaving the house.
Yes.
Hi, David Mouse. How are you doing? Um, Before we get deep into it, as we're letting people start to roll in, can we get a bit of background on you?
Sure. You know, I came from a rough background. I was abused as a kid. I think a lot of people have gone through abuse, but my father was particularly violent towards his family, myself, my mom. I grew up experiencing a lot of anxiety, some depression. I was never diagnosed, but I do believe that I had ADHD. I
Mhm.
had a lack of confidence in myself for the longest time, Eric, and it wasn't until I was in grade 7 and a teacher kind of put me on the spot in front of all my peers and insulted me. He
That's helpful.
Yeah, you know what? I don't know whether it was tough love on his part, but
But it was tough.
it was tough. But it was also a defining moment. What had
Hmm.
happened was I was always failing, and I never believed in myself. I
Mhm.
was never encouraged to do any better than I was doing. And he basically called me out and said, "You know what? I expect everybody in the class to pass except for you, Nadeau. I know you're already going to fail." That was the
Wow.
kick. That was the kick that I needed to get me going. I had promised myself ever since I was a kid that when I grew up, I was going to become a policeman so I could arrest my dad. My dad killed himself at when I was at the age of 17, but I followed through on my
Jesus.
promise. Became a cop, and with that newfound confidence that I got from that one teacher, because I proved him wrong, I ended up excelling in everything that I did. I became a hostage negotiator, a detective in the sexual assault and child abuse unit, polygraph examiner, went to the Middle East and became a peacekeeper there, and have, now retired from the police service, but I'm on the circuit doing keynote presentations. I'm an
Mhm.
author of a book. A lot of good things are happening because I worked at it.
I want to jump back a little bit because honestly, especially when you're in an abuse type of situation, it quite often, and I'm sure you can confirm from your police work, is a cycle. Like most abusers were abused.
Yes.
And your circumstances particularly horrid in this sense, especially with the suicide and everything. How did you overcome and keep that rage or prevent the rage, I guess you could say, from consuming you to be able to be more helpful versus, more angry at the world?
That's a loaded question, but I think I'm going to start out with this. Yeah, it's a great question because it's true. Having been a police officer, I've been in situations where the excuse and the comment, well, my client, comes from an abusive background. He's just imitating what he's learned. It's
Mhm.
learned behavior. He doesn't know any better, and the bleeding hearts would listen. Uh, for me, in grade 7, when that teacher challenged me, it lit a fire in me. Of course, I was only in grade 7, but it lit a
Mhm.
fire in me, and I started to believe in myself. Still, I had my moments where I wasn't exactly sure what I was going to do. I'd made that promise when I was a kid to become a police officer. But I do think that, at the time, as I grew older, uh, a lot of religion, because I was a Christian, and a
Hmm.
lot of this belief of, being a better person really helped me to develop that sense of who I was, and helping others has always been something that I've wanted to do. So it it was something. It was a choice, and we are all left with choices in this world. What you either choose to be good, you choose to be bad, you choose to be kind, you choose to be unkind. Like it really comes
Mhm.
down to choice. I'm just glad I made the right ones, and I was rewarded by seeing that others appreciated what I was doing.
Have you been back and ever talked to the teacher since?
No, I haven't. I wrote about him in my book, but I don't think he's here with us anymore.
Okay. It would have been interesting to go back because not everybody has the privilege to know their parents as an adult or know relatives or teachers or anything else as an adult. And sometimes being able to actually go back and meet with them again from a different perspective can be really, really interesting. You could have potentially confirmed if you were correct or not, or what was on his mind.
Yeah, it would have been a tremendous opportunity to do that. I've never looked into it, to be honest. I went back to, to a school reunion. He wasn't around. I never really inquired about it. I was on the fence for so long. I've got to be honest. I thought that he was doing that because he didn't like me. And it wasn't until maybe just a year and a half ago that somebody said, you know what? I think he did that for you.
Hmm.
And when you look back at certain circumstances, we often say, well, that happened to me, as opposed to saying that
Mhm.
happened for me. That moment in time where I felt humiliated and embarrassed in front of all my classmates, and I started liking girls. So, I was trying to impress them, but I was the bad boy of the
Sure.
class. And, that was a moment that didn't happen to me. That was a moment that happened for me. And I embraced that change and recognized that the only person that was standing in my way was not the teacher, was not my dad, it was me. I
That's pretty
had to.
profound. That's pretty profound for the age to internalize like that versus to have it happening to you. I mean, I don't know, and people in the comments, please, how was it for you in 7th grade? Because 7th grade was a nightmare for me. I wasn't even mature enough quite to be a teenager. I was just small enough to be beat up. It's like the worst possible scenario in the world.
Yeah. Well, you know what, a part of it I think was anger. I was angry that he had humiliated me. It was an internal anger, but it was kind of like, I'm going to prove you wrong. And in proving him wrong, I recognized that I could actually do something if I applied myself to doing it. So it's taking label what emotion you're feeling, but
Mhm.
and in grade 7, I couldn't put a label on it. I just knew that I had to prove him wrong. And in doing so, I recognized that I actually did something right. And it was a nice feeling to have people go, hey, uh, the test that I was talking about, I had always, barely passed, if passed at all. And this particular occasion, what this teacher did was that he always called the student with the lowest mark to the front of the classroom to take the walk of shame.
Okay, so he's did it with everyone.
Everyone. And that was, I was always the first one. He'd grade the papers, and hey, and I wouldn't even have to wait for my name. I'd just get up. I was conditioned, to fail. And when I studied my heart out, Eric, I felt confident about that test. And of course, the day that he started calling names, I was getting ready, and I thought, no, I think I knew that. I wasn't the first, second, third, or fourth, or 10th, or 12th, or 15th student to be called up. And by this time, half the classroom had gone through, and my fellow classmates were looking at me going,
Did he
"Why aren't
forget you?
you up there?" And I'm going, "Hey, I
He
don't
skipped you
know."
today.
That's right. I thought one of two things: I did really shitty, or I did really good. And there were three of us left in the classroom to be called. My cousin Lee's, another girl by the name of Giselle, and those were the two browners of the classroom. They always excelled, and they were competing with each other, and me. So I'm there thinking, oh, which way is this going to go? I have no idea. Maybe he's holding me for last because I did really bad. My cousin got called next, and I was the second highest mark in the classroom. That was my defining moment. Was like, ha,
Wow, it's
yeah,
amazing. I'm getting
yeah.
some feedback here, which is awesome. Gavin Stone, he's an author out of England, spy type. I was bunking off most of the time. I hated school.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I think most of us do. And
God, I did.
well, our education system is flawed. We have an education system that really doesn't teach us some of the essential things that we need to learn. So
Mhm.
therefore, it's uninteresting. But it's something that we all have to do because at some point we have to graduate to get jobs, right?
Oh, sure. And Dennis Smith, Paul's lucky to have grown up at seventh grade. I was 29 years old. Well, that's still pretty good, Dennis. Thanks
Well,
for sharing, Paul. Go for
Dennis, the important thing is that you reached that epitome or whatever you may call it, but you did reach it. Some people never reach it. So, kudos to you for having done that and recognize that you have. I think you have to give yourself credit for your accomplishment, no matter when it happens. We're all growing and we're all, trying to make it in this world, and some of us make it sooner than later, but as long as we make it, that's what's important.
Okay, I want to slip into your police career because I know a lot of people are here to, dive into that and the hostage negotiation aspect.
Sure.
Now, was that extra duties as assigned type of scenario?
Well, no, there's a very strict selection process that is involved in becoming a hostage negotiator. Here in Canada, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police are the ones who make the final decision as to who will be a hostage negotiator based on their qualifications, their ability to communicate, whatever. And so our police department happened to be looking for one, and my name
Hmm.
was tendered because of the work that I had done and the ability that I had to communicate with people.
Which
Um,
work was that?
Sorry,
Which work was that?
I was working as a detective, working in the
Okay.
sexual assault and child abuse unit,
Okay.
and so dealing with victims of sexual abuse and child abuse,
Hmm.
you have to be very personable, understandable. You have to listen to them and encourage them to speak. Those are all nice ingredients to have as a hostage negotiator as well. So I had that. My boss recognized it. So when I put my name forward, I saw the job and I thought, hey, wow, what a cool job. And I was excited about it. So I put my name forward. The RCMP called me in for a battery of tests and interviews, and I got the job, which led to several months of studying in Ottawa at the RCMP Police Academy. And then I graduated.
Okay. Now, I'm going to guess maybe one of your biggest asset is a lack of being judgmental.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
So let's dig into because I think a lot of people would like to know, and I'd like to know like how can you wire yourself? Because I'm not going to say I think some people are more naturally wired to be a negotiator than others, but I think you can probably train yourself to also be a negotiator in life. So what are some good traits that you would look for in a negotiator?
That's one of the things that I'm teaching people right now is how to negotiate in life and in business. The traits that you need, as you said, number one, being non-judgmental. One of the greatest lessons that I ever learned in police work, and I think it came to me in police work after dealing with victims of crime, general public, even bad guys, I came to realize that we are more similar than we are different. The moment we start to embody that and to appreciate that is the moment that we start to be able to put ourselves in the shoes of the other person that you're dealing with. So in a hostage crisis, when you're talking to a hostage taker, what is their motivation? Imagine yourself in their shoes. What's their greatest concern? Is this something that happened spontaneously that they didn't plan for? How excited are they? What would I do, or how would I respond to the cop talking to me saying, hey, what's going on in there? I just want to help. How do I connect with someone? Well, I connect with someone by understanding or trying to imagine what I would be like in their shoes. So if you're a negotiator going into business, you
Mhm.
have to imagine what it must be like for the other negotiator. They're more similar to you than they are different. They've got the same kind of concerns. Are they going to take advantage of me? This is what I want out of the deal. Whatever it
Sure.
is, the moment you start to connect and understand and appreciate and ask questions, then you get answers. We don't draw conclusions without first asking the person what's on their mind. It's like if you're at home and
Mhm.
you're with a significant other and an argument ensues, and you try to push your point without trying to determine how they must be feeling or why it is that they're
Sure.
doing what they're doing. You're not going to succeed. The moment you sit back, you listen, and you try to understand is the moment that you begin to accomplish the most.
Yeah, I've had on Chris Voss and Derek Gaunt. I believe you're familiar with them
Very
both.
much, yes. Yeah.
And I believe they both have said that in a hostage scenario, something always has gone wrong.
Mm.
People don't wake up in the morning and go, you know, I'd like to take 3 hostages today.
Yeah.
Maybe 4. It could be a busy day. That just that by itself means that something went awry, something went wrong.
Right. And then imagine, on the level of things going wrong, that being, quite high, is that you now have people's lives in your hands.
Right.
You are now a target, for snipers, cop snipers, whatever. Your life is going down in the toilet and you just don't know what to do. What you need is someone who will not tell you what to do, but will get you to start thinking clearly, and working, cooperatively. And that happens when you simply say, what's going on? And it's true in negotiations, business negotiations. You don't walk in and give your demands right away. Otherwise, you don't build a relationship. People they will listen to you and they will deal with you when they know you, like you, and trust you. That can happen in a short order. One of the best tools that we have is to keep this shut and just to ask very specific and open-ended questions. How can I help? What's going on? What are your greatest fears? Like, how can we work together at bringing this to an amicable or a good solution together? And it's true in every aspect of life and business.
Well, I believe I talked to you about this before, but I think there are definite parallels between hostage negotiation and interrogation. And could we go into that? Because I believe you've done both.
Oh,
And
yeah.
can you, talk about the similarities and some of the differences? Little nuance.
Oh, I certainly can. Yes. I was a polygraph examiner, and for people who understand polygraph, it's called a lie detecting machine, but it doesn't detect lies. It just detects changes in physiology. But
Right. And it's controversial too.
it's very, very controversial. The lie detector is the detective. It's not the instrument. It's the detective, based on what they understand, what they know about human behavior, how people answer, body language, all that. Walking into an interrogation room with murderers, which I've done a lot of, or gang members, sexual offenders, whatever. Again, it is trying to establish a rapport. And one of the ways that I would start doing that is by walking in to state my purpose. I'm not here to judge you. I'm not here to find you guilty of anything. I'm only here to find out what happened. I don't know who you are, who the person sitting across from me is, but I'd love to get to know you. My name is Paul. You can call me Paul. May I call you John? And like whatever. And tell me about yourself. Just try to building some rapport, not getting right to the nitty gritty. Again, if you go in for a business negotiation and you start setting forth, what you expect out of it, you're going about it the wrong way. You need to make that human connection. You need to get somebody to actually look back at you and go, maybe they're not after me. Maybe he or she does have my interests in mind. And
So what would be a good first question? I mean, that's interesting parallel you're putting right there. I'm guessing you don't just go right into the product. You might be like, hey, you a father? You have kids? Is that how you might start? What would be a good example?
Absolutely. It pays to do your background checks, try to find out as much about your client. In this case, my client was an accused, like a bad guy. I want to find out what their record is. I want to find out what their family status is. I want to find out, what their likes or dislikes are. If I can't find that, I want to ask, even if, and the first thing that most of them would say, they'd put up their hand and they go, my lawyer told me not to say anything. And I said, that's fine. I understand that. And you've got a good lawyer who's given you some good advice. You don't have to talk unless you want to, but let me say a few things, and then I would disclose a little bit about myself and ask them, and make small talk. It might be about the weather. Today, it might be about COVID-19 and wearing masks, whatever. You want to
Mhm.
find a common link to get them to open up and start talking. You want to watch the body language go from here to, here to maybe here and then maybe here, and
Mhm.
that may take a lot of time. It may take a little bit of time, but they're going to be looking at you and evaluating you on a second to second basis. They want to see if you're giving them BS or if you're actually
Mhm.
being genuine. So you better be genuine. And if you're not, you're in the wrong business. Care about the person sitting across from you, and you're going to get somewhere. If you don't care and you're only thinking about yourself, people will see that. I often tell people it's like dating.
Mhm.
What do you do when you date someone? Well, you dress the part, you choose a location. When you get there, you put on your best, foot forward. You show genuine interest to find out if there's a connection between the two of
Sure.
you. The same is true when you're interrogating or negotiating or even talking to somebody, in a hostage crisis. Albeit in a hostage crisis, you don't have time to rapport build. You have to get right down to the nitty gritty, and
Right.
sometimes that's what we have to do in business too. But again, you can show your genuine self by just, asking questions and showing interest.
Okay, interesting. I'm going to key off a couple things. One, your choice of words I think is very important. You said client. That is fascinating. That implies a servitude after a fashion. And now, was that a deliberate choice, as in you're a police officer, you work for the people, technically you're working to do the best you can for that person in front of you?
That was a choice. Yes. I've thought about that word for a long time. And I thought, who were these people sitting across from me? Well, they were people I wanted to serve the best I possibly could.
Hmm.
Having that attitude of servitude, if I could use that, I think shows people that you are not thinking of yourself above them. You're
Hmm.
actually serving them. And how wonderful it is to get served. If I'm getting served, by, a waiter or a waitress in a restaurant,
Unless it's a
they
sheriff. I don't want that one.
what's that?
Unless it's with a warrant. I don't need to be getting.
Precisely. Yeah, precisely. No, 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 no. Hey, oh, that's my brother. He's my twin brother. He just left. Um,
Exactly.
no, yes, serve others, be genuine, be willing to go the extra mile, and they'll see it. They'll hear it in your voice. They'll see it in your body language. You can't lie, like you can't lie every second and not get caught. And people will look at you and instinctively, because we have this fight or flight built right
Sure.
into us, and we look at somebody and we evaluate them right off the bat: friend, foe, or someone I could procreate with. It's basically comes down to three. When we were,
Mhm.
cave people, it was, can I trust them? Can I?
Fight, flight, or fornicate,
That's it, and it
or
comes down
food.
to that. So be honest. But that's, isn't that, nothing has changed. Nothing has changed.
That is an interesting perspective, though. So, how do you wire yourself? Because let's be honest, you have a lot of evidence in front of you. You are working sex crimes. You are potentially with a child molester or rapist or something. This is not your favorite type of person. You
No.
have to have feelings. I know you have a daughter. There had to be two daughters. Okay, there you go. You have. How do you switch that off? How do you control that to establish any kind of rapport?
Part of it again is a natural curiosity to find out how come.
Mhm.
Everybody's motivations are different. Now, if it's a real bad, there are some people who are just plain bad. Again, as a good detective, as a good negotiator, as a good interrogator, there is a role that we have to play. And
Mhm.
sometimes we have to play it in such a way that when you leave the room, you're going to throw up. However,
Mhm.
an actor going on to, a film set is going to play, a killer when he's not a killer, going to do things, or she's going to do things that they don't normally do, but they're going to make you believe that it's real because that's their job. When you can do that and use some human emotion, to convey that message, people are more likely to open up to you. Most people, and go in with this, most people want to tell you what's on their mind. Most people will feel guilty for having done something, especially when they're caught.
Sure.
It's like,
There's pressure on them.
That's it. They're fight or flight. It's like, how am I going to get out of this? When you have somebody who says, you know what, I still see some good in you. I still, there are a few things that you told me earlier on that indicates to me that you're a good person. I just can't understand why this happened. Now, you may offer them, was this a spur of the moment thing? Was this, something that you had planned for a long time? If it's something that you planned, wow, you know what? Maybe you're not the person I thought you were. However, if this was just a spur of the moment kind of thing, I might be able to understand that a little bit more. Was this a spur of the moment? So you're giving them a way out. And most of us will try to justify what we've done. For example, if you're driving and the speed limit is 50 miles an hour, whatever, you do 70 because you're late for work. You're justifying, hey, I have to do 70 because if I don't, I'll be late for work. So again, police officer pulls you over. Why were you speeding? I'm late for work, officer. That's a justification. If I steal, I might justify it. Hey, I need the money. I need to pay my rent. I have a drug, I have a drug habit. I have a booze habit. We justify it. Now you get somebody coming in and saying, what happened? You kind of want to tell them, hey, this is what, but you're afraid of the consequences. But once you connect with the person sitting across from you, and it works for me 90% of the time. Once they trusted me, once they knew that I actually really wanted to understand their motivations, they wanted to get it off their chest. They just, it feels good to have someone not judge you, someone say, I get it. I don't agree with it, but I get it. That explains a lot about you. And then just give them something, a little bit more. Just say, I still think you're a good person. Don't agree with what you did. You're going down for this, whatever it is. But then it's kind of like they're shaking your hand saying, hey, thanks for listening to me. People want to be heard. Even the bad people, they want to be heard. They want to get stuff off their chest. We're living in a tough world, and people are doing shit all over the place. But if you get caught for the stuff that you do, and you have somebody who's actually going to listen to why you did it, maybe not accept it, but just understand it, it's a little bit easier to talk.
It's interesting because you're an actor also, in addition to being an author. And you made me think of something because you were talking about being convincing as a criminal and all that.
Right.
Don't you actually probably have to exaggerate a little, because aren't most criminals really banal?
Yeah, you know what? You do have to, to act. Sure, you do. It's a mental preparation. Like before I walk into an interrogation room, I have to check my ego at the door. I have to check, my feeling about my personal feeling about who the person is, what they may have done. I've read their record. I know that. I have to leave that BS outside the door. If I don't, I'm going to get caught and they're not going to cooperate. At the end of the day, I have other clients other than the client sitting in front of me. I have my community. I have the world as my client. I need to do the very best I can. So sure, part of it is going to be, getting into the mental state, getting ready and knowing that you have to do some acting here, Paul. Otherwise, they're not going to cooperate. They're not going to want anything to do with you. So it is a mix of a lot of tools and just your ability to get across to somebody.
I also met in film and television as well that playing a criminal, I've met some criminals and a lot of them are boring. They're not elegant masterminds. They're just people. Right. And most people are boring. So it's not just that criminals are boring, people are boring. I'm probably the most boring person here. But don't you have to embellish or exaggerate what traits you see or don't see in order to portray a criminal in that fashion? That's one part of the question. The second part is, how does it feel to know real crime in real life versus Hollywood crime in life?
Well, they're very, very different. Yes, you do have to embellish to answer the first part of your question. I'm sure that that's part of what most good interrogators, interviewers, and negotiators do. there is a very big difference between real crime and Hollywood crime, obviously. Real crime can be sickening. Some of the things that I've seen, experienced, read, investigated would make you sick. To portray that, on film is going to take some good acting, because reality is sometimes a lot tougher than what you see in Hollywood, because it hits you right here. It's real. When you look at that child, or you examine the crime scene, or you read the details of what happened, and you're just sickened, and they're saying, okay, Paul, you're up. It's like, okay. All right. Give me a second. I just need to get in the right headspace, and, I'm on, and you go in. But again, I do stand by the fact that you have to show some genuine interest, keep your judgments out of the picture as much as possible, try to reach, the individual, because not all criminals are bad people. Like some people do bad things for stupid reasons, whereas others are just plain bad, and you go in with a different attitude.
Right.
Sometimes I walked in and I wasn't really interested. Like I had the evidence. It was just sitting across from the person to make them know that I had the evidence. So every case is different, and we have to evaluate every case as being different.
That makes total sense. As an example of an interrogation, I was reminded of one. Have you seen the Russell Williams, I believe his name is,
Yes.
Interrogation?
Yes.
I was told by a couple of people that was almost a picture perfect, frameable, like an example of a fantastic interrogation. I didn't know if you felt the same way or.
Oh, not only do I feel the same way, Jim Brown, the detective who on the OPP who did that particular interrogation, was in my class. We studied the same technique. I remember Jim. He was OPP. That's why he got that one. And I thought, shit, I would have loved to have had that one. We do the same thing. We do the very same. The same role. It is a role, and it is a very specific role. There are certain things that we bring in at certain times, certain stories that we give, and it is a means to get to the truth. There was another interrogation that was exactly like that one that I had the pleasure of watching, and it was here in Toronto about a year and a half ago.
The truck driver, right?
Yeah, the truck driver. And I watched the interrogator on that, and I said, that was textbook, because that's exactly what we train to do. That is a polygraph examiner's interrogation method. It's not the regular interrogation method that a lot of detectives have studied. It's the polygraph examiner's interrogation method. There's a difference. Polygraph examiners are the lie detectors, as I said a little earlier.
Sure.
We are the experts. We've got to know how to do this and how to use it psychologically to our advantage. And, once you do that, it's amazing how many people open up. The ISIL guy, in the van, told everything. If you watch that interview, it is fascinating and disturbing at the same time. You watch the Russell investigation, it's the same way. But yes, textbook.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely want to bring it up, and I'm glad to hear it because now we can relate. Okay, so that's the way we picture Paul doing it, is something pretty similar to that.
Yeah. That's exactly how I went about. See, before I became a polygraph examiner and I worked in the detective office, the sexual assault unit, I didn't have the extra tools that I had later in my career when I became a polygraph examiner, because once I was selected to do that, it was another 6 months of extensive training at the RCMP Academy in psychology and all. So I added a lot more to my toolbox, because now this was going to be my full-time job, was going to be sitting across from murderers and rapists and gang members and whatever, and talking to them and getting them hopefully to tell me the truth, not to confess, to tell me the truth. Like, I'm not looking for confession, I'm looking for the truth. So, you walk in with that attitude, as I'm not here to get you to confess, I'm not here to judge you, all that kind of stuff. It comes from that specific training.
Okay, yeah, you said what happened. Was that actually an advantage that you didn't have all the tools to begin with? That you had to learn how to be successful without all the extra training? So then when you did get the training, you already had a core and you could just enhance what was already
Yes.
there?
Yeah, there were a couple of techniques. Now, I worked in the detective office for several years,
Mhm.
and I was good at interrogating, and I learned a lot about my method. And I remember when I first got in the detective office, probably was 1985, 1986. I became a junior detective,
Mhm.
and one of the first things I did is I sat back and I said, I don't know how to get somebody to talk to me. I have no idea how to get them to confess. So I picked up the phone and I called our polygraph examiner at the time, guy by the
Hmm.
name of Mino Van Dyke. And the guy
The
was,
name.
yeah, I thought, who knows about interrogation? Our polygraph examiner. I
Hmm.
went to see him. Eric, he made me feel so uncomfortable. In the first 20 minutes I was there, I wanted to run out, but it was a technique, it was a method. And I felt like
Hmm.
telling him everything after 20 minutes. And then he smiled at me and he says, "Gotcha." And I thought, "Holy mackerel." And what he had, because I was sweating. I was like, I have to get out of here, my fight or flight. And then he smiled at me. He reaches over and he says, "I got something for you to read." And he pulled out the polygraph examiner's manual of
Hmm.
interrogation techniques. And it was a book and binder. And he says, "Study this. Come on back in 2, 3 weeks. We'll talk more." And I think that gave me a real boost in my methods, because I started to use what he had provided me and taught me in that very short period of time to my advantage, and then just built up on it. I had something to refer to.
Well, that's awesome. And I imagine that you don't just become a great interrogator or a great negotiator immediately. These tools have to be practiced over time. And I don't like the word hack, but you know where I'm going.
I do. I do.
What would you recommend as a a very small set of tools that are immediately actionable? Could be 2 or 3 things. You just start doing that and just start getting really good at that, and then you keep adding as you go. What would you say would be a good focal point?
One of the very first things that I would do is not to rush into, getting to the point.
Okay.
I mean, like, and let's use this in any negotiation, whether it's business or as an interrogator. You want to state the purpose. In business, you want to say, "Hey, we're here to talk about X, Y, Z, and how we might be able to work together and stuff like that."
Sure.
Then you want to start building rapport. So you leave the objective behind and focus on the journey. Not enough of us focus on getting to know the person sitting across from us. We don't focus enough on building a rapport, showing
Mm.
genuine interest, finding a connection. "Hey, I got 2 daughters. You got 2 daughters?" I remember talking to this one gang member that the cops, the detectives thought, "This guy, knows where the body's been hidden. He knows, like, who killed him. Can you run, like, a polygraph on him?" And I remember, saying, "Sure." And I sat down with that guy and I did exactly what I've told you. I didn't
Mhm.
get to the purpose. I stated the purpose off right off the bat, but then I started talking, to him, getting to know him. And I knew some background about him. He had two girls as well. So we started talking about our daughters. We spent 45 minutes talking about our kids and laughing. And by that time, he walked into my office like this and he says, "I hate cops."
You're like, "So do I."
Yeah, yeah. And I went, "You know what? I kind of hate half of the guys I work with too, so I know where you're coming from." And he goes like this, And so I started talking, and we started talking about our kids. When we hit on that kids, I said, "I hear you have two little girls, and you're a real good dad." Wow, he lit up, and then he opened up. We were laughing and chatting. I'm gonna imagine the homicide guys were sitting there saying, "When is it gonna get to the test? When is it gonna get to the
Mhm.
test?" I wasn't interested in the test. At that 45-minute or so mark, the gang member looked at me and says, "Paul," and he was calling me by my first name. Again, drop your title. You are not
Right.
Mr. Smith. You are not Mr. Nadeau, Detective Nadeau. You are Paul. You're a human being just like them. Connect on that level. Don't show, that you're, superior or inferior to
Sure.
them. You are an equal. At 45 minutes, he goes, "What do you want to know?" And I said, "Well, I told you. We want to know where the body is and who did it." He says, "Can you guarantee me one thing?" And I said, "What's that?" He says, "Can you guarantee my name will never come out?" So I sat there and I said, "Give me 1 minute. I'll be right back. I'm going to make some inquiries." Walked into the other office, talked to the homicide guys, and I said, "Yeah, is he, a confidential informant?" They said, "Yes. His name will never come out." I said, "Good enough. That's all I need to know." Walked back in the room and I said, "You got it. We won't bring up your name." And he says, "Okay, I'll let you know." And he told me everything. And on his way out, which a
Hmm.
lot of criminals have done, they shook my hand and they said, "Thank you." Because a lot of people want to unburden themselves and they want to be recognized and appreciated, all those kind of things. So, to answer your question, long way of doing it. Number
Oh,
one, know what you want, but don't be in a hurry to get there. Number two, you know, enjoy the journey. Find out as much as you possibly can about the person and be flexible. Know your bottom line, like know when, how much you can take, how much you can't take, or whatever,
mhm.
and be willing to have an open and honest, rapport. Ask some open-ended questions, show some genuine interest, then ask for what you want.
Perfect. I got some questions lined up here. Hi, JP. Thanks for the follow back. Do you ever watch movies and cringe at the continuity of TV negotiators?
I have not watched cringe. I have watched some great television shows that explore the art of negotiation, or even interrogation. One was Lied to Me. Like
Mhm.
that television series Lied to Me. I loved it because I started watching it and I said, yeah, yeah, yeah. Like, yeah, I did that, and yes, he's doing well. There was
There's some
another.
trivia about that. I got to interrupt because it's funny.
Okay.
Actually did a study with Lie to Me and, oh God, what was it? The Mentalist.
Yes.
And they they tested people who have never watched those shows at all, and then tested people who watched the shows. And the ones who watched the shows did worse on body language reading.
Really?
Yeah, so I had to share that with you. It's a hilarious thing, and I think it's true because you start going, he crossed his arms. He's
Right.
looking to the top and the left. It's a visual, and you come up with a lot of garbage unless
You
you know what you're doing.
Well, you do, and remember, we have three channels of communication, three main channels of communication. We have
Mhm,
our body language, we have our tone of voice, we have the words that we say.
mhm,
So all three must be working together. So, for example,
sure.
if you were to ask me, "Did you steal that?" and I go, "No, no, no. Why
Did
would
I
I do
steal
something
what?
like? Yeah, why would I do something like that?"
Yeah.
Then you look at that, you go, okay, the body language was closed. The no, the tone and pitch of the no was not right. And there
Mhm,
was deflection. Why would I do something like that? So I'm going to be very cautious about, again, taking mental snapshots every 2 seconds, mental
sure.
snapshots, listening to the tone of voice. Do all three work together? Again, same scenario. Did you do that? No, I didn't. I didn't do that. There's a difference in that, and if it's consistent, that the body language, the determination, uh, nothing is giving him away, like, so it requires, a little bit further investigation. But boy, like I'd sit there and I'd go, that's the right answer. That's the right body language. That's the right tone of voice. I'm on the right track, so yeah.
Mhm. Fascinating. Now, a few more here. I've heard negotiator talk about the art of saying nothing at times. Let the awkward silence sit there for a second and let them break the silence. Any thoughts on that from either of you? Um,
Yes. Why don't you start, Eric? You've spoken to a few negotiators. Okay, I'll start. All right.
there you go.
Yeah,
It's very effective.
it is very effective because and I knew you were going to do that. That it is that pregnant pause we call, like, and it's
Sure.
true. Even if you're delivering a talk, to be an effective, keynote speaker, Every once in a while, you want to say something and then go, and the reason we do this, and then people are,
Sure.
they can't wait to hear what you have to say. So using silence is a great tool.
Oh,
And,
yeah.
it has to be used effectively. And even, uh-huh,
And
or
what
even,
else?
yeah,
And what else?
exactly. Yeah, yeah, that's it. And then,
Continue.
yeah, well, exactly. And then, using what I call mirroring, um,
Yeah.
using the last three words of what somebody might have said to elicit more information. For example, well, I can't do it because my company won't see it.
They won't see it?
Right. They won't see it because, they're not ready. They're not equipped for it.
Not equipped for it.
No, we still got a lot of work to do, and that's how it works. Right. Yep.
Sure.
You could be an interrogator now.
That's what I'm doing. No,
Yeah,
just kidding.
it is, isn't it?
Well, it kind of is, because wouldn't you say that it's really an interview and not necessarily interrogation, and having the mindset of you're interviewing them automatically raises it to be a more comfortable level.
I agree. I hate using the word interrogation. I like using, it's a conversation, it's a dialogue.
Chat.
Um, it's an exploratory dialogue in many cases, because you want to explore what's going on with the other person, what their fears are, what their hangups are, and what it is that they need and want and would appreciate. So yeah, it is more of an interview. It's a dialogue. You want it to be a dialogue with you saying only 20% and them saying 80%.
Definitely. I'm guessing though that sometimes you'll have to reverse the order. Like early on, you might have to be a bit more of a chatterbox just to calm them down,
Yes.
and then slowly start stepping back. Like, yeah, well, you have two daughters. I noticed that. God, my kids, God, they drive me crazy. I
Yeah.
don't know what I would do. Blah, 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 blah. I don't know. And I'm just assuming I've never done it.
No, you're absolutely right. Because some people don't want to talk. They're afraid to open their mouth. They've been told not to open their mouth. Or in the case of a hostage taker, they don't know what to say. Because they're still trying to process everything in their own head. So you have to take that all into consideration, and you have to be willing to do most of the talking in the very beginning until you see that body language or you hear that tone of
Sure.
voice start to open up and start to lean in. They're interested. Now that maybe it's time to hand the ball over to them and just to listen and say, so how can I help? What
Now that's
happened?
another good question. Do you ever, like I've had Chase Hughes on, and he loves doing this as an example. When somebody's really closed off, he'll hand them a Coke, and that forces them to actually reach out and grab the drink, for example, or a pen, or he'll just give them something, and that opens up them a little bit. Do you use anything like that, or do you use techniques, especially if they're really closed off, leaving things open-ended or with mystery to kind of get them to say, well, so what happened?
Yeah, I'll try to mirror their body language to a degree.
Mhm.
So if they're closed off and they're leaning down a little bit, I might lean down too. Instead of handing them a Coke, I might reach up to them and, touch them on the shoulder, to let them know that I'm there, to let them
Mhm.
know that I'm still connected to them. Touch can be very effective. You have to be very careful where you touch and who you touch and how you touch. But, when you do connect physically with someone, especially in a moment like that, it's amazing, how their defenses kind of like go down. Is like, okay, I'm feeling that human connection. Again, we are creatures who feel a lot, and we're processing things at the same time.
Mhm.
Imagine, somebody reaching over and patting you on the shoulder and just saying, hey, it's going to be okay. Like you get that feeling that somebody actually cares. That was one of the things that I used very, very effectively. Again, sometimes, I have a chair, so
Mhm.
rolling out to give them a little bit of space, or
How about
rolling in.
proxemics? Do you ever, instead of being face to face, do you ever kind of cant to the side so they don't feel like it's a confrontation? It's more of
Absolutely.
a huddle or collaboration?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And knowing when and how to do that is so effective. You brought this up a little bit earlier. Learning as you go, like what works and what doesn't,
Sure.
evaluating what you've done. Hey, when I moved in that way, it scared the hell out of him, like he doesn't want that. How do I use this effectively? Should I move to the side? Now, again, men and women, like if you're interrogating a woman, you can't be, with your legs, spread right open, right in her face. She's going to want to run, and I don't blame her. She should get the hell out if she could, but she can't. So she's
Right.
just going to close right up, and that's it. So you have to be very, very cautious, how
Mhm.
you invade somebody's space and why you do it and how you do it.
Yeah, be open, not splayed.
Absolutely. Yeah. 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 That's it. That's it. Yeah.
All right, we got a few more here. As a people person, I always took pride in preventing or filling those awkward silences, but I've tried it in my own life and found it to be very useful at times. It's awesome. Silence, I think, is powerful.
I do too.
Ottawa baby, and same person. Russell Williams lived in the same suburb of Ottawa as you. Uh, Congrats.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
um, Mushtaba Alam, and I apologize for mutilating it, which I'm sure I did. Were the techniques he used to make you so uncomfortable found in the polygraph examiner's interrogation manual?
It wasn't found in the manual as much as it was taught in the classroom and in practical exercises. We had to do dozens and dozens and dozens with professional actors, and
Mm.
even in my hostage negotiation days, it was a lot of role playing, and you learn a lot through actually doing it with someone who knows what they're doing and who knows that they can't be bluffed. You know, so you
Did you ever
experience.
work? And sorry to interrupt. Did you ever work with anyone training wise who may have taken a hostage? Like, not everybody's in prison forever, but somebody who maybe spent 20 years, 30 years that could help train you, or did you ever talk to prisoners, that type of thing?
I always talk to accused. I would want to know after everything was said and done, and if I got someone to disclose what they had done, I'd sit back, and by this time we had built a rapport, and I would sit back and say, "Why don't you tell me what was going on in your mind?
Mm.
Everything is off now. Just tell me, how did you pick your victim? I'm really curious." And it's amazing how many of them want to tell you. By that time,
Mm.
they know you, like you, and trust you, and you go the further mile and you say, "What was it that made you do that particular night? How did you plan? What did you do? Where did you hide it?" All these little things that add to your particular case. But it's amazing how many people want to tell you, like what was going on through your mind, at the time. So my education came from the people that were sitting across from me, because I
Mm.
would ask after getting, we'll call it a confession. After getting the confession, I'd want to go into what was going on in your mind at the
Mhm.
time. Tell me what you were feeling. Tell me how you were feeling. I wanted to, but I'd keep them there another half an hour, three-quarters of an hour, and just,
Mm.
get as much information and then compare my notes to other people that I'd done it. And in more cases than not, people do the things, things in the same, kind of sequence for the same kind of reasons, like it's kind of, it's fascinating. It really is. I also worked with the Ontario Provincial Police Behavioral Science Unit. Uh,
Ah.
yeah, I went up because I made a really good connection with one of the behavioral scientists up there, who was a genius. Like this guy was a psychologist, and he loved to jump in the car and show up at my scenes. If I had a hostage situation, he'd sit in the truck with me,
Mm.
and he'd listen, and he'd say, "Why don't you try this? Why don't you try that?" So at some point, I just said, "Hey guys, can I come up and work with you guys for a couple of weeks? I'd love to see how
Mm.
you work." My boss gave me the okay, and I went up and I worked with the behavioral science unit for a couple of weeks. Learned a hell of a lot from them, and it was just again, it was something else to put into my bag of tools.
Well, perfect. Previously, this leads right into this question. Have you ever been caught off guard during an interview? Like thinking you're getting somewhere and they suddenly give a reply that throws you and forces you to reevaluate the whole strategy.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that happens, again.
Can you
Um,
give an example?
yeah, I can. Let me see. I had um, I had this one young girl report a vicious sexual assault. A young man that she knew had allegedly taken her into his bedroom and base in a basement in this
Mm,
apartment, and he had sexually assaulted her quite violently. She came in, she gave her statement, and totally believable. Like she sounded, like textbook. Yes, like I thought I was after a serial rapist. I put out the gauntlet. I had so many detectives trying to find this guy because he had taken off from his apartment. And when we finally did catch up with him, I went in there, and again, like I made a mistake. I had my mind made up because I had
mm,
listened to her. And this was early on in my sexual assault, uh, role that I realized you can't have your mind made up. You have to be open minded. And so what my techniques were, da 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 da, and he finally, at one point, he just broke right open, started to bawl his eyes out, and started to plead. But it was the way in which he did it that I was sitting there going, "I got you." Holy shit. Okay, maybe I don't.
it's like you
And
expected the response, but then realized, wait, it mirrors it. It rhymes, but it ain't the same.
that's right. And it had me sit back so much so that I'm thinking, now what do I do? Now what do I do? There's a thing in law enforcement. It's called reasonable and probable grounds, and you've heard this. You have to believe that the person sitting across from you has committed the crime in order to keep them in custody. If you don't
Sure.
believe that they did, then you have to release them. It's just you can't. Oh, I think you did. No, you've got to have
Mhm.
that reasonable certainty that they did, that you could prove this in court. I no longer had that. I had that when I first arrested him. When the gauntlet was set out, I thought, sure as heck, I'm going to find so much on this guy. And then he opened up and he just laid it all out, and I went, oh gosh. I had to release him pending further investigation. And the long and the short of it is, after I did my investigation, she was the one who was arrested, not him.
Well, what kind of monster is that? I mean, I'm sorry, she's a monster.
Yeah, yeah. But again, I don't want to judge too many people without knowing, the circumstances. Yeah,
Well,
you can't.
I will. I'll do it for you.
Well, yeah, you can't paint that one in a nice way. You just can't. Yeah, she wanted to hurt him because he had hurt her, but not in the way that she had described. So yeah, she was a monster.
She
And
did a
there,
monstrous act. I'll back off a little and just say
no, no,
that.
yeah. If you falsely accuse anyone of anything,
It's horrible, and
ah,
we're doing that now. I mean, it's. I find a lot of the current situation online, everything else, just so toxic. People are lying. They accuse people of things, and they just throw out words that are serious, life changing, life altering, harmful words, and I don't like that at all.
you know what, Eric? I don't either. And I've thought about this a lot since COVID-19. We're suffering from battle fatigue right now.
Yeah.
Being separated from the things that we know, not having that physical contact. If you're single, you don't have anybody. It's not easy for people,
And
and we're getting
elderly, you can't
we're
see
getting
their.
angry. We're
Yeah.
getting angry and impatient, and that's why we're seeing so many people. I want to do this and I want to do that, and you're thinking again. We have to put ourselves in the shoes of the person going through it. Man, it's like a bully. You know, bullies have got shit going on in their heads too, things that they haven't dealt with, so they're bullying on you, because they're feeling
Sure.
inadequate or victimized, and they need to show their power. We're seeing a lot of that right now. And I try to remind people, even, I mean, I've got stuff, going on in my life that isn't easy to deal with, like everybody does. Everybody is living a life, that we just don't know. And that anger that comes out towards other people may be the only way that they can vent it. Some people are just plain bad. We know that, but other people are just plain hurt. And we've got to recognize that maybe that's where some of this shit is coming from.
Well, that's a perfect closing point, because you wrote the book on how we can face our own issues and take back control of our life, or specifically take back control of your life. And the subtitle is Rescue Yourself and Live the Life You Deserve.
Yes.
And you also have a TED Talk, and people can find out more at jpaulnadeau.com.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Oh,
You know what, the book, the book is really significant right now, and even more so than it was published a year and a half ago, because now we are living with COVID-19. There are guidelines in my book that talk about what we're going through right now. It's almost as though I had a premonition that this was going to happen, so I wrote, a guideline for people on how to keep their sanity and how to deal with their own self-sabotaging thoughts, how we can actually feel good even in a bad situation. And a lot of it comes down to state of mind, your mindset, what you tell yourself, how you push yourself. Not only do we need motivation, we need determination. We need to plan. We need to have a reason to get up and a reason to do the things that we want to do. And I demonstrate how we can actually achieve the very best in our lives.
okay. Where's the best place to buy the book from?
Most bookstores carry it now that bookstores are reopened. But online, I think, would be your best bet, because it's online just about everywhere in the world. I've seen it in other countries. It's in English, though. But yeah, online, Amazon.com, Amazon.ca, Amazon.uk. It's all there.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. And I have one more question. It's COVID. You're stuck at home. You got a lot of time. Where's the audiobook?
It's funny you should ask. I've got my trusty little, tool set here. I've been talking to a friend about getting that audiobook out. HarperCollins has just given me the go ahead to do it on my own, so it's coming.
Fantastic. Well, Paul, thank you so much.
Thank you, Eric. Always a pleasure.